Chapter 6. Marie. Uncle, why do we not use this hall? Marie had been helping Drosselmeyer carry an array of old machine parts and half-finished inventions from a storage corridor in his estate. It was a strange-looking hall with its red, gold, and black checkered floor. A peculiar pattern lined the wallpaper, but with all the cobwebs and dusty contraptions covering it, Marie couldn't quite tell what it was. Drosselmeyer brushed off his hands, careful not to smudge his suit pants. Even while carrying odds and ends, he was still impeccably dressed. My dear, he said, when you live to be my age, you will find that there are a great many things you have, but do not necessarily need. He looked around at the walls and ceiling of the hallway, as though observing it for the first time. I've lived in this manor for many years, but even I do not know all its secrets. Perhaps when I was a younger man, I would have explored all the nooks and crannies. Now I prefer to spend my time in my workshop, where I'm at home. But this is part of your home, Marie pointed out. True, he said, but it has served as a better home for my inventions while I'm not working on them. Marie marveled at the long, untouched devices strewn about. Sewing machines with cogs and pistons attached to the pedals, a bicycle with a bellows appendage connected to a wood-burning stove. Go. And were those steam-powered roller skates? Did you make all these inventions? One second, folks. Did you make all of these inventions? She asked. Yes and no, Drosselmeyer admitted. Some I created, others I collected in my travels. But I tinkered with all of them, and you can be certain there's a story of each. How about that one? Marie pointed to a miniature balloon hanging from a scrollwork hook. A tiny tin basket with a conveyor belt inside was attached to the balloon by strings. A mouse-powered hot air balloon, Drosselmeyer explained, so even our smallest friends can enjoy a bird's-eye view. Marie giggled. And that one? She pointed to what looked like a pair of mechanized wings. Ah, the great aerial escape, Drosselmeyer said with a twinkle in his eye. A story from my younger years, but not a tale for today. And what about that one? What about that down there? She pointed all the way down the hall. The invention in gold. What is that? In the dim glow of the lamplight, Marie and Drosselmeyer could just make out the gleam of a golden contraption at the far end of the hallway. Upon my word, Drosselmeyer said quietly. What's that doing there? He began to pick his way over the dusty bits and bobs toward the end of the hall. When he reached the golden invention, he stopped. What is it, Uncle? Marie asked, making her own awkward way over the mess. It looks like... Oh! Standing before them was a beautiful grandfather clock. Drosselmeyer had shown Marie in his workshop when she'd arrived at the estate. But now the entire clock was covered in a thick layer of dust, and the numbers appeared dim. It was as though the whole timepiece had gone dark, waiting to be lit from within with golden light. Isn't this the clock my father helped you mend? Marie asked. It is indeed, Drosselmeyer nodded slowly. But I don't understand what it's doing here. I could have sworn it was still in my workshop. I thought so too, Marie added. I used to look at it every morning, but it's so dusty. It must have been here a long time. It's strange, Uncle. I don't remember missing it, and I don't recall moving it, Drosselmeyer said. How very odd. Marie had never heard Drosselmeyer speak in this manner. She glanced at his face. An odd expression crossed his features. Bewilderment? Then where does the door lead? She asked. Drosselmeyer looked down at her, confused. Door? He asked. Yes, Marie pointed. The wooden door behind the clock. Drosselmeyer returned his attention to the wall in front of them. His unpatched eye grew wide. A heavy wooden door stood behind the grandfather clock, imposing and sealed shut. Now that is something, he said. I do not know where it leads, for I should have never been inside. Should we open it? Marie asked. Yes, Drosselmeyer answered. I think we should. Carefully, he and Marie slid the grandfather clock to the side. Its base groaned in protest, leaving thick streaks in the dust on the floor. Oh, Marie exclaimed. Something moved from behind the clock. Squeak! It was a large mouse. The rodent ran in a circle before scurrying away and disappearing under the piles of dusty inventions in the hall. Perhaps our furry friend already knows what is behind the door, Drosselmeyer said with a chuckle. Let us find out as well. He took hold of the knob. On 3? He asked Marie. They counted and together pushed open the heavy wooden door. Dust plumed out. Beyond the doorway was shadowy darkness, no windows or light. Stepping through would be like stepping into the abyss. I don't like this, Uncle, Marie said, beginning to feel a bit unsettled. Do you think it's dangerous? Come now, Drosselmeyer encouraged her. The Marie I know is always up for an adventure. As long as I am with you, I promise you are safe. He reassuringly placed a hand on her shoulder, and together they stepped through into the unknown. At first, they couldn't see much of anything, but the farther they walked, the more their eyes adjusted to the dark. They found themselves in an impossibly long hallway. It went on, farther and farther from the checkered floor corridor. A brisk breeze suddenly blew the wisps of hair back from Marie's face. There must be a hole in the wall of the manor, Marie thought. I see something, she said. Up ahead. A soft glow at the end of the tunnel became visible. Pink at first, then orange and yellow. Uncle, the walls are made of tree bark. Marie reached out to touch the sides of the hallway. Drosselmeyer did the same. So they are, he said. Very curious. They continued along, the light growing brighter. The walls of the corridor seemed to fade, giving way to individual tree trunks. And with the rising sun, both Marie and Drosselmeyer realized where they were. Uncle, we're in a forest, Marie exclaimed. She was right. Stretching out before them was a vast landscape of evergreens, grassy pathways matted with dew led between the trees, and the air was fresh with the scent of pine. The door has let us outside, Marie said, but Drosselmeyer shook his head. There is no forest in London. We appear to have traveled elsewhere. How is that possible? Marie asked. I'm not sure, the old man replied. Come, let's go a bit farther and see if some answers lie ahead. Together, they pressed on through the trees, but no matter how far they went, they discovered only more questions. The forest appeared massive, filled with winding paths that wove between lush pine trees towering overhead, all stretching majestically toward the bright blue sky. Marie and Drosselmeyer took turns choosing which path to follow next, keeping careful track of the direction they went and leaving pine cone markers to avoid getting lost. It was a remarkable place, Marie thought. The trees shimmered impossibly green, vibrant and alive, with nary a brown pine needle or a fallen log in sight. She had never thought a forest could look so perfect. They continued wandering for nearly an hour without any further clarity on where they were. Then, finally, just as Marie's stomach began to rumble in anticipation of tea time, the trees thinned, and Marie heard the faint sound of rushing water up ahead. Do you hear that, Uncle? She asked. I think there's a river. Perhaps, said Drosselmeyer, but to my ear it sounds more like a waterfall. They pushed past the last trees and entered the brilliant sunlight of the forest's edge, the thundering sound of water echoing louder and louder all the while, until they saw it, the end of the forest and the beginning of everything. Uncle, Marie exclaimed, it's like a whole other world. Marie and Drosselmeyer had reached a grassy precipice overlooking a wondrous landscape, endless in reach and breathtaking in its purity. Fields of wildflowers stretched for miles, rippling with soft color. Distant mountains shimmered with the hint of snow-capped peaks, and wide before them, just a few yards away over the grass, was the edge of a massive chasm that dropped down hundreds of feet to a rushing river below. The canyon snaked around a central island, separated from the fields and mountains like its own perfect sanctuary, with a raging waterfall plummeting down into the abyss. It connected to the mainland only by a single stone bridge spanning the expanse. Not a person or animal stirred amid the magnificent sight. It was as though the entire landscape was uninhabited, save for one very prominent detail. A palace, Drosselmeyer breathed. Rising high in a splendor upon the island was a magnificent palace, sparkling with colorful stonework and swirling turrets. Windows dotted the towers, shimmering with crystal and glass, and the ornamental domes at the top of each spire looked, to Marie, almost like perfect dollops of ice cream atop cones. She felt her heart race at the impossible beauty of it all. It was like a vision from a storybook, a dream made real, imagination brought to life. Where are we, uncle? Was all she could say. I do not know, Drosselmeyer replied, equally astonished. This is not what I expected when we entered the doorway, but now that we are here, it warrants further exploration. And that is just what Marie and Drosselmeyer did. Every day for nearly a month, in between tinkering and lessons, they would return to the door at the end of the hall and enter the magical world just beyond the estate walls. The landscape seemed to stretch an infinity, with countless miles of fields and valleys and brooks to traverse. Even the central palace contained more rooms than could be explored in a single day. It was like an entirely new realm opened up through a doorway in a dusty, abandoned corridor, and that was what Marie and Drosselmeyer called this wondrous place, the realm. They had no idea where the realm was exactly. Having traveled the world, Drosselmeyer was quite certain this mysterious land didn't exist on any map. But they did discover three things. First, the realm was uninhabited, void of any animals or other people. Though someone had clearly built the palace, whoever that someone or something was had long since departed. The cavernous rooms sat vacant, without furniture or adornment. It was as though they lay quietly waiting for a new guest or a new owner to come fill them with life and memory. Second, time moved much more slowly in the realm than in the outside world. Hours spent wandering through the fields would take mere minutes back at the estate. Marie and Drosselmeyer could spend an entire day exploring and still be back in time for tea. And third, things that existed in the realm couldn't be brought back to the real world. Marie had stumbled upon that discovery by accident. One day, while she and Drosselmeyer were enjoying a picnic lunch in the soft grass, she'd woven herself a crown of wildflowers. Ah, Marie, that is beautiful, Drosselmeyer had said. Don't worry, uncle, Marie had countered. I'll make a crown for you as well. The old man had chuckled. The best inventors never lose their spark of playful wonder. Always hold on to that. Later, Marie and Drosselmeyer had headed back to the estate, both wearing the wildflower crowns. But the moment they stepped through the doorway and over the threshold onto the real world, the delicately woven sprigs had vanished like dust dispersing in sunlight. Oh, Marie had exclaimed. Where did they go? Drosselmeyer patted his head. I don't know. He looked back through the doorway. I never considered trying to bring something back from the realm into the real world. Curious. But weren't the flowers real? Marie asked. They were very real while I was working with them. Although she paused for a moment. I do remember thinking I wanted blue flowers for your crown, but all I had to work with were pink ones. And then suddenly I spotted some blue flowers where I was sitting all along. It was strange, because I'd been certain there were only pink flowers there before. So you imagined blue flowers and they suddenly appeared? Drosselmeyer asked. Marie shrugged. I'm not sure. Maybe. The old man nodded slowly, even more curious. But what does that mean? Marie pressed. Suddenly, a bit worried that perhaps their fantastic discovery had been an illusion all along. I believe it means that things are possible inside the realm which are not possible here, he answered. So it's not quite real? Marie asked, disappointed. She had grown to love the realm and the happy times spent exploring there with her uncle, and it didn't feel right for it all to be fake. Drosselmeyer turned to look at her. What makes you say that? On the contrary, it is extraordinary and very much real in its way, made from pure imagination. Ah, at that Marie brightened. So, do you think perhaps I can make more things come to life in the realm, like the flowers? Drosselmeyer pondered her question for a long while. I suppose I don't see the harm, he said finally. After all, imagination is the birthplace of invention. A wide grin spread across Marie's face. Oh, thank you, Uncle. Thank you so much. Just think of how much fun it will be to make new things in the realm, to see what's possible. The old man laughed to see Marie so jubilant. I believe it is the beginning of a grand adventure, he said. Then he placed his hands on her shoulders. Just always remember, only you can bring your dreams to life in the real world, and the real world only has one of you. Do not get so lost as to forget to come back. I won't, Uncle, Marie said. I promise.